This is Life and Fate by Vasily Grossman, and it was my big read a few years ago, and actually it's one of the big reads of my life. It's nearly 900 pages long. It's been described by some as the Second World War's War and Peace. Grossman was a Russian writer. He finished writing this in 1960, and he tried to publish it, but the Soviet authorities wouldn't let him, and he was visited by KGB officers who, as the phrase goes, they arrested the book. They took away his typescript and copies, and even the typewriter ribbons that it was written on, so that it could be destroyed and not appear. He was told that nobody would see this book for 200 years, but a copy was smuggled out, and it was printed in the West at that time. It's a massive book. Linda Grant writes a really good introduction to it. And in the introduction, she says that it took her 3 weeks to read this book and then another 3 weeks to get over it. Well, it took me 3 months to read it, and it's almost 7 years now since I read it, and I am still thinking about it. Not all the time, but it's still with me. It is a profoundly affecting book. And of course I do thoroughly recommend it, but it's a project. I didn't read much else in the kind of third of the year that I was engaged with this book, but it was time well spent. Let me read what I wrote about it at the time for my own benefit. I said it's a stunning book, one of the big reads of my life. There's a lengthy appendix of all the main characters, and remembering who was who remained a major challenge, although I did get to know, as it were, some of them as I read on. Afterwards I realised, with help from the other introduction by Robert Chandler, that instead of worrying too much about the continuing narrative, and it was really difficult to hold it all in my head, I could have read it as a monumental series of vignettes and worried less about having to try to remember and carry all the story. This book contains the most powerful writing I've ever read in the journey of a group of Jews to a Nazi gas chamber. I was riveted to my seat as I was reading this on an Italian train, and I would have gone beyond my stop, I think, rather than interrupt the section that I was reading. It is immensely powerful writing, really, really good. The book's brilliant about Stalin and Stalinism, and it taught me lots about the Russian experience of World War II. It also gets inside Hitler's head, and one chapter Hitler goes for a walk on his own in the woods, in the snow, and thinks and reflects, and becomes even scared of the forest. Quite amazing, really, to go inside the head of Hitler and Stalin. It can be read just for its poetic prose, I think, but so many of the characters are also perfectly realised psychologically, and I did wonder when I'd finished reading it, could I possibly entertain the idea of reading it again? I don't know. Okay, let me give you a sense of the structure of this massive book by telling you a bit about the list of chief characters that's included as an appendix. There are 7 pages of these, and these are just the chief characters. So there's one group who are called the Shaposhnikov family and their circle, and this guy Victor Strum is a physicist, a Jewish physicist, and he's one of the main characters, and his family and his various friends, and he comes to fall foul of Stalin later on. But there's an incredible set of edgy telephone conversations when Stalin rings him, and he's being investigated because his physics research, of all things, is seen to be too Jewish, because he's a follower of Einstein. So there's these characters, and their stories are told, and then another big section is about Victor's colleagues, and then these are various lab assistants and head of the personnel department, head of the magnetic laboratory, all those sorts of people. There's Victor's circle in Kazan. Then there are a set of people not related to Victor who are in a German concentration camp, and their various stories and their experiences there are told. Also in the Russian labour camp there are a group of characters, and they have various stories told, and both the guards and the prisoners, and some of the prisoners are just criminals, others are political prisoners, and their interactions are all done. There's a section of characters who just feature in a grouping under the title of On the Journey to the Gas Chamber, and that's the bit where it is the most stunning writing that I mentioned earlier. I could just talk about that really, but I won't. There's another group of people in a prison. There's a group at the Stalingrad power station. The Battle of Stalingrad is a major event in this book. There's members of a fighter squadron of the Russian Air Force, so there's their various stories. There's a group of people in the tank corps. There's officers of the Soviet army in Stalingrad. There's soldiers, the kind of ordinary soldiers in a barracks. There's some people out on the steppes, the Russian steppes. And then there's officers of the German army in Stalingrad. All of them are in this book, all tell their stories. So, it's obviously a major undertaking, but as I said earlier, maybe not worrying too much about trying to hold all those people in my head would have helped me just appreciate it and let some of it flow over. The writing is so beautiful, it can just be read for its prose. I haven't read a lot of Russian literature. I've read Dostoevsky's The Idiot years and years ago when I was young, and then more recently Crime and Punishment, and I also read Anna Karenina a few years ago. But this is, in a sense, the fourth big Russian novel I've read. I would strongly recommend it. It is an amazing book. Just incidentally, I do see things on the internet about people talking about reading 100 books a year or whatever. I find it very, very hard to believe. I'm a slow reader, and I read probably 20 books a year if I'm lucky. And this one did take me 3 months. I think slower is better on this, and this book's worth a look. I would thoroughly recommend it. It's worth the time and effort, I think. It really is. I hope you have a go at it if you haven't. Thank you. If you like any of my videos, could you please click the thumbs up underneath? As I'm told, this will help others get to see them. Thank you.